shot by a man by the last name of Ezell, who's from Tennessee. And while he's laying on the ground, asks the question, do I have a friend near? And the guy that shot him says, yeah. And so he goes to him, and Captain Cannon takes a ring off his finger and says, find my mother. Now, we know that Captain Cannon wasn't married, so it probably was a Mason's ring or something that would have identified him. And he takes the ring off and hands it to him. Ezell goes through and goes to basically Arrow Hill, where they were camped, and finds the people there, the Watkins family, and says, I got this ring. They said, yes, it's Captain Cannon. And they find him and find his mother, and they bring her, and she's with him until he passes on January 1st. Now, if you go and see his grave in the cemetery, don't hold it against whoever did it, but like us when we write checks for the new year, it says January 1st, 1863. So don't say, hey, you guys got your dates wrong. They put the wrong date on his grave. Okay, and so that's where that is. There is some talk, and we've done some work down there in the Brenner Cemetery, that he may not even be there, and maybe in Knoxville. So there's thought with that. But this is the position. What did you want to add from the attack standpoint?
Just orientate you a little bit. Like I say, the center was right down there. You can see the flag at Brenner Cemetery, basically orientates the center. Then the far right, you can see Glenmore and that. Then this far, and you can see the tower, water tank tower. Then in the distance, you can see that cell tower flashing. That's basically where the haunted house is, right across the county line in Hamlin County today. Then you got this, what I refer to as Valley of Death depression, where they tried to outflank when they were restoring artillery, outflank this hill and stuff. So we assume or think the best we can piece it together. In this area, somewhere over here, where Captain Cannon fell on some of these back slopes of this hill, thereabout. And when they were developing this industrial site, they actually found some artillery shells and stuff off this hill to substantiate the written record. In other words, one thing I found out as a relic hunter, metal detector, whatever, you got the historical fact that a lot of these sites, when you start pulling it out of the ground, they lied. They had big egos. A lot of them did. Then again, you got to look at, there's been people collecting stuff ever since they were surplus mine detectors. And a lot of the battlefield in Mossy Creek is gone, basically, other than points that we showed you. But the big thing to do is keep that memory alive, the sacrifice that the men in blue and gray did for what they believed in here on this hallowed ground. And it's left up to us to perpetuate that memory in a good way and to save some of this battlefield for future generations. And that's another thing that we like to do in the LCWPA is promote preservation. And like I said earlier, help all your local historical sites in your community, because we're all linked one way or another. David?
So while they're being overwhelmed and they lead this charge, around the same time, they look to the right, and coming through the valley is 2nd Brigade. And 2nd Brigade, like in a good John Wayne movie, right? Comes across the bridge, rides into the middle of the line, and is able to split the Confederate force from the force that's over here to the force that's over here with the Texas and Arkansas. And they push them back now, right? And so the Union was on their heels and moving backwards. Now with the reinforcements of 2nd Brigade, we're now having numerical superiority, overwhelming numerical superiority, and the strength of Captain Cannon and the 1st Tennessee's charge. They're able to push the Confederates back towards Talbot. At the end of the day, as the light goes down, the line is essentially where it was at the start of the day. And so it doesn't change. Usually we leave these tours, it's about 50 or 60 degrees, and people are like, oh, the next day it was in the negative 20s. Wow. And so when it was in the negative 20s, you can appreciate how cold it was afterwards. That some of the sentry posts, right? That a lot of the wounded could not be addressed because it was dark and it was cold, and so they froze to death where they were.
And they stuck to the ground.
And they stuck to the ground. And so those that were dealt with were able to. So they took most of the Union and Confederate wounded that they could find, and they went to what was Elizabeth Chapel in the old Westview Cemetery and Methodist Cemetery, and that was the Union Hospital, where they were able to deal with most of the wounded there. A lot of the units that were stuck here for the next day or two, they burned down houses. They said there wasn't a fence post in Mossy Creek after that because of how cold it was. And one of the houses where some of the officers were staying, that some of the enlisted men basically set that house on fire and used it as a large bonfire, and the officers had to get out of the house. So, but that is kind of where it is.
And to add to it, they actually got permission to burn their saddles.
Yeah.
Wow. They were that cold. I mean, it's hard to imagine the bonfires that they had going.
Yeah, it couldn't be big enough.
Yeah, you can't get one big enough.
Yeah, and I will say this, that, well, most of us probably didn't hear about this unless you read Facebook or seen other things. One of the greatest things that you can draw from this is that it was impactful for the people that were here. Some of the very best in the Confederate Army and some of the very best in the Union Army were here at this battle, right? So it wasn't a large collection, but it was a large collection. It was a collection of very skilled soldiers that fought against each other. To a person, the Union soldiers, because their enlistments were up on December 31st, to a person, they all re-enlisted here in the same muddy uniform that they fought in. They all re-enlisted on December 31st into January 1st. Right, so it was impactful. When you read the stories of some of the veterans that fought here through the war, and then they talk about what happened afterwards, they mention that, hey, I was at Chickamauga, I was at the Battle of Franklin, I was at the Battle of Mossy Creek. It's in that same vein, right? So like, what they did here impacted that. Like, it's one of their top three always. All right, so it was that intense. It was on a smaller scale, but it was intense. It was intense. And so we do have one more account that we wanted to share, kind of the aftermath of the battle.
You'll have to excuse my modern glasses. This is it's not the original letter, though it's a facsimile. It was written by a man from the 60th Alabama who was under Longstreet's Corps, and he had cut apart Union Army paperwork to write his letter on back home to Alabama. And this he dates it January 1864, camp in Morristown. Now, before I read it, there's a few. He's writing to his sister back in Alabama, and he comes from a very small rural farming community. And a man named Jasper is also in his company from this small rural community, and he knows this man's family. But this man's been keeping a secret from his family that Jasper let slip in a previous letter that was written in December. So he says, January 1864, camp in Morristown, Tennessee. Dear sister, and the writing is horrible. And on top of that, he spells how he speaks. So when he says killed, it's C-I-L-E-D, and right quick is R-I-T-K-W-I-K. So camp near Morristown. Dear sister, with great pleasure, I sit myself and drop you a few lines to let you know I am well at this time, and I truly hope that these lines will reach your hand in due time, and find you well. I received your kind letter dated the 26th and 27th of November, and was glad to hear from you, and hear you was well. You wrote, R-O-T, that Jasper Hurd wrote that Anderson, their brother, was killed at the foot of Lookout Mountain, which he was. I reckon that you think hard of me for not writing you and telling you about such things, that he was killed. He was killed on the 5th of October, and I wrote to you sometime and Pap and Sarah, but left it out. He was shot through the head. The ball went through just over his left eye and came out just behind his right ear. He'd wrote, Jasper, that you had to hear it without burying, that we had to hear it without us burying him. We was ordered off right quick, but I got permission to stay behind with him. And I done so until we had him put away nice as we could under the circumstances. I could not get a coffin, but I found some old planks and I had them put around him as best as I could. And I laid him in a little spot, a nice place where I could point out the spot years to come if we should want to go visit him. But he goes on. Like David was saying, all these men, Lily and Cannon and the young 17-year-old, they're real people. And I want you to reflect on your own personal lives and your hopes and dreams and aspirations. And remember that men like Mr. Roper and his brother that was killed at the foot of Lookout Mountain, that they were just like us. And they would go on to do great things. Both these armies, the Federals would go to fight in the Atlanta campaign at places like Dead Angle, Allatoona Pass, and Kennesaw Mountain, the Battle of Franklin. Longstreet's men, just after they're camped here in Russellville and fighting at Mossy Creek and Dandridge, they go to the wilderness and they suffer heavy casualties just months after being here. And they go on to the Petersburg campaign where they're besieged by Federal soldiers. And a lot of the 9th Army Corps, the Federal soldiers that are here, go to Petersburg and almost follow them, but they fight the entire war. And like David said, on their flags, on their drums, when they read out their battle honors, they say, you know, Siege of Knoxville, and the big ones, Antietam's, but they say Dandridge and Bean Station, wherever that may be, and Mossy Creek, wherever that may be as well.
One thing I'd like to add what Cleve told me when he did his book campaign to know was, he said to give back to the community. So that was his way to give back. So I'm going to reprint some more of them, I think, here in the future, so we'll have the new fresh supply out there. And maybe come by the Longstreet Museum and pick up a copy of that. That was what Cleve wanted to leave his legacy to the battle.
Last point, it's cold and we're going to certainly go. Feel free to go back to the old City Hall. The displays will be out for quite a while and you didn't get to see them. Feel free to do that. We'll have people there. We'll be there pretty much the better part of the afternoon, so if you want to take a look at that. I would say this, that certainly Jefferson City is in a period of development. And as much as it is in a period of development, and I'm not against development because I think it's great for us, but at the same point, we need to preserve what is ours and what is part of our history. And so, as we have projects like the new athletic complex that's over here, we don't need to lose Lily's Hill in the midst of that. You know, we don't need to lose those things that 4 or 5 generations from now will not even have a clue where it was. We don't want to be in Knoxville where they talk about the Battle of Campbell Station and we say, yeah, over where the Taco Bell was where the battle was. We don't want to be in that spot. And so we do want to make sure that we as citizens of this area do a great job of not just remembering it and sharing the story, but remind those that we elect and that we work with how important it is to us, right? And I'm not saying to pick it and all those other things. But what I am saying is that when people know that something's important, they treasure it, and they preserve it, and they take care of it. And I as your city historian, I would challenge us that we do that. We want to thank you for coming out today. We really appreciate it. We'll linger again for a few more minutes. But again, if you want to go to the old City Hall, and then tonight, like I said, at Mossback Distillery, I'm going to do 2 PowerPoint presentations on kind of what happened, the pictures of those that we described today, what happened at the battle, and then really who fought there. I'm researching a book, and really my purpose is not to retell the same story that Cleve told, but to tell the story of those that were here. Kind of like Stephen Ambrose's Band of Brothers, to understand the soldiers that were here, and like Kelly read and what our others have done, is understand the human stories of what brought them here and what happened afterwards. So if there's anything we can do for you, certainly feel free. Again, the old City Hall, and we'll let you know.
And one thing, Bill Landry, in the Heartland series, some of you remember, he thought so much of it, Cleve and Stan's back there someplace. we were over here shooting the Heartland series, The Death of Captain Cannon, so some of you may want to go back and revisit that. Stan and I was talking about this morning. I said, this is about the same day we were shooting that Bill Landry in the Heartland series, same weather, use our So, but that's how important this is to the culture and stuff. And like Dave said, we're not saying protest. I'm all for private landowner development. You've got to work with the planners of your community to find that happy balance of development. Going forward. But come and see us tonight at the PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you all.